That morning, I was tending to the lilies in my backyard, completely unaware of what life had in store for me. My hands were buried in the soil, carefully checking the roots of the flowers I had just planted. Everything was peaceful, just like any other day, until a sharp pain shot through my back. I had no idea what was about to unfold, especially with my step-nephew Ryan being there by pure coincidence. My garden had always been my sanctuary, my escape. After my husband Charles passed away, it became the one place that truly healed my soul. But that day, something felt different. I was 60, but people often said, "Eleanor, how do you manage to look so youthful at your age?" Honestly, there was no big secret. I just took care of myself. Healthy eating, regular walks, and a determination never to let go of the woman I used to be. But even with all that, loneliness had sunk deep into my heart. My beauty might still have turned heads, but inside there was an emptiness I couldn't shake. As I positioned one of the flower pots, a sudden pain stabbed through my lower back. It was so sharp and unexpected that I dropped everything I was holding. For a moment, I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the discomfort. But it didn't help. The ache spread from my shoulder down to my spine, leaving me frozen, unable to move. Then, out of nowhere, I heard Ryan's voice. "Eleanor, are you okay?" My step-nephew, Ryan, 25 years old, strong build, the kind of presence that naturally commanded attention. His dark hair caught the sunlight, and his concerned blue eyes were locked on me. He had this effortless charm, the kind that drew people to him even though he never seemed to realize it himself. And now all that youthful energy was completely focused on helping me. "My back," I managed to say, pointing to the spot where the pain was worst. "Something's wrong? I can't move. Are you ready for this? Because this isn't just any story. This is a journey where boundaries blur, emotions tangle, and unspoken confessions linger. Every moment might stir something deep inside you, pushing the limits of what you thought you understood. If this sounds like your kind of story, don't forget to follow along." Ryan crouched down beside me. "Let me help," he said. When his strong hands touched my shoulders, I felt an involuntary shiver run through me. "I can give you a massage, it might help," he added. I didn't have the strength to protest. The pain was overwhelming, and I was willing to try anything for relief. But what truly caught me off guard was the unexpected effect of his touch. Ryan placed his hands on my back and began pressing gently. I had to admit, I hadn't felt this kind of closeness in years. His fingers were firm yet surprisingly gentle as they moved over my tense muscles. Slowly, the pain faded, replaced by a warmth spreading through me, unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. It was as if the lonely woman inside me had suddenly awakened. I let out a breath, a little too deep maybe. "Ryan," I started to say, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't finish. He didn't say anything either, just kept massaging, his hands moving over my back in a way that made me hyper-aware of every touch. In that moment, I felt something shift, something unspoken, and it both scared and excited me in ways I wasn't prepared for. Ryan kept working his hands across my back, steady, deliberate, until he suddenly paused. Then, leaning closer, he looked at me, his gaze unreadable. Something had changed, and neither of us could ignore it any longer. "Eleanor, this is serious," Ryan said, his voice filled with concern. "We can't fix this out here in the garden. Let's get you inside near the fireplace. The warmth will help, and I'll grab some cream to rub on your back. We need to take care of this." I hesitated for a moment, but the pain made the decision for me. I nodded, and he helped me to my feet. "Careful, take it slow," he said, his strong hand steadying me. There was something reassuring about his touch, a closeness I hadn't felt in years. As we stepped inside, the crackling fire filled the room with a golden glow. The heat wrapped around me like a blanket, easing some of the tension in my body. Ryan quickly spread a soft blanket on the floor and motioned for me to lie down. "You need to stretch your back in a more comfortable position," he instructed, his eyes serious yet filled with a hint of hesitation. "I've got some cream. It'll help loosen those muscles." I lay down, letting the warmth from the fire seep into my body. Ryan squeezed some cream into his palms and rubbed his hands together to warm it. The first touch of his fingers on my shoulders sent a shiver through me, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Just relax," he murmured. "You'll feel better soon." But every movement of his hands did more than just ease my physical pain. It stirred something deep inside me, something I thought had been long buried. As his fingers worked down my back, my thoughts became both clearer and more chaotic. Ryan's touch wasn't just healing, it was awakening. I hesitated for a moment, caught between uncertainty and surrender, but the pain was too much to ignore. I quickly accepted the relief he offered. He gently grabbed my arm and helped me shift positions. "Take it slow, be careful," he warned, his hands firm but gentle. As his strong fingers wrapped around me, I felt an unexpected sense of security. This young man's protectiveness gave me a comfort I hadn't felt in years. When we entered the house, the flames in the fireplace cast flickering shadows across the walls. The warmth and steady crackling of the fire created a sense of calm that instantly relaxed me. Ryan quickly spread a blanket on the floor again and gestured for me to lie down. "You need to loosen your back in a more comfortable position," he repeated, his voice still serious but laced with something softer. "I brought some cream. This will help soften those muscles." I settled into the warmth, my body sinking into the comfort. Ryan squeezed more cream into his hand, rubbing it between his palms before placing them on my shoulders. The instant his hands touched my skin, I inhaled sharply, my body reacting in a way I hadn't expected. "Relax," he said, his voice soothing. "You'll feel better now." With every stroke of his hands, I felt something shifting within me. His touch wasn't just providing relief, it was stirring up emotions I had kept locked away for years. As his fingers moved carefully over my back, my thoughts wavered between peace and confusion. Ryan's touch was slow yet deliberate, pressing deeper both physically and emotionally. "It's no wonder your muscles are so tight," he said, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth. "You're taking on too much, Eleanor. The garden, the housework. You need to take care of yourself too." I swallowed, trying to find the right words to explain. "The garden is my therapy, Ryan. Without it, I don't know what I'd do." He interrupted, his touch softening just a bit. "But you need more than just the garden. You need people, someone who cares about you." His words warmed me even more than the fire, but they also unsettled me. I didn't fully understand what he meant, or maybe I did, but I wasn't ready to accept it. As his hands moved slightly lower on my back, continuing the massage, the warmth of his touch worked out the tight spots in my muscles. Yet it was creating a different kind of tension inside me. Being this close to him felt both reassuring and terrifying. "Ryan," I finally said, my voice shaky, "you're really helping, but—" "I know," he said, his voice slower this time. "But everything will be okay. Just relax, Eleanor." I could feel that his words carried more weight than simple reassurance. Like the firelight flickering in the room, his presence seemed to draw closer with each passing second. His hands glided lower down my back, and as each muscle loosened beneath his touch, an uneasy feeling began to creep in. His warmth pressed deeper, slow but deliberate, and my mind started to cloud. An internal battle waged within me. "Eleanor, stay calm," I told myself, but I couldn't seem to control it. As his hands moved, his fingers brushing the edge of my shoulders, my heart pounded. One part of me felt comforted by Ryan's closeness, while another reminded me of the boundaries that had been in place for years. Suddenly, a voice inside me screamed loudly, "He's your step-nephew, Eleanor! You shouldn't be doing this!" The fireplace had filled the room with a golden light, but after a while the heat became stifling. When I noticed Ryan wiping the sweat from his forehead, my eyes followed the movement instinctively. Then, in one swift motion, he pulled up the bottom of his shirt and lifted it over his head. His sun-kissed skin practically glowed in the firelight, his body sculpted and strong. It's hard to explain what I felt in that moment. I hadn't been this close to anyone in years. "This heat from the fire is too much," he said, casually tossing his shirt aside. His tone was light, but there was something else in his gaze, something that left me frozen in place. Then his eyes met mine again, holding them for just a little too long. "You're getting really warm too," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You'll feel worse if you keep that shirt on. Let me help you." My breath caught in my throat. I thought about resisting, about pushing back, but the warmth on my skin and the stifling air in the room were becoming unbearable. Slowly, I nodded. Ryan knelt beside me, reaching for the hem of my shirt. His hands were warm as they brushed against my skin, sending an unexpected shiver through me, not from cold, but from something else entirely. Carefully, he lifted my shirt, guiding it over my hair, then set it aside. For a moment, the air between us grew heavier. His eyes lingered on me before he quickly turned away, as if trying to respect the moment. Yet, I didn't need to see his face to know what his expression might reveal. I could feel the weight of his thoughts, just as I felt the turmoil within myself. "Eleanor," Ryan said, his voice deeper, softer than before. "Do you feel better now?" "I think so," I replied, though my voice cracked. The words barely concealed the storm brewing inside me. It wasn't just the physical warmth, it was the heat of Ryan's presence that surrounded me, pressing against every part of me. "Come on," he said, reaching out his hand. "Let's go sit on the couch. You'll be more comfortable there." I hesitated for just a second before taking his hand. The moment our fingers touched, a spark passed between us, an energy I hadn't felt in years. As he helped me to my feet, his strong arms steadied me. For that moment, Ryan's protective nature felt so clear, so natural, that my fears slowly began to melt away. We reached the couch and he gently guided me down before sitting beside me. Though he left space between us, the tension in the air remained. There was something unspoken between us, something impossible to put into words. I struggled to keep my thoughts in check, to ignore the turmoil raging inside me. But tonight it felt almost impossible to deny the weight of our feelings. The fire crackled softly, deepening the silence between us. My heart pounded so loudly in my chest that I was sure he could hear it. Ryan sat beside me, his presence overwhelming yet comforting. Just being this close to him made me both nervous and, oddly, at peace. I turned my head slightly and our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, curiosity maybe, or something deeper. In that closeness, it was impossible to ignore the intensity of his expression. Deep, searching, but also undeniably soft. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Ryan slowly reached out, his fingers brushing against mine. A shiver ran through me at the warmth of his touch. He didn't say a word, but the silence between us carried more meaning than any words could. His eyes lingered on my lips for just a second, and everything shifted. He leaned in slowly, his breath warm against my skin. The thoughts inside me quieted. There was no more right or wrong, only Ryan's closeness, his presence. I closed my eyes and moved ever so slightly toward him. When our lips met, time ceased to exist. The first touch was hesitant, soft, exploratory, but within seconds it deepened. His warmth, his breath, the way his lips moved against mine, it felt as though everything else had faded away. The loneliness, the fear, the longing I had carried for so long seemed to dissolve in that moment. This was more than just a kiss. It was the release of years of suppressed emotions, unspoken desires, and an undeniable connection. As the kiss deepened, his hands gently cupped my cheeks. My fingers instinctively gripped his shoulders, feeling the heat of his skin beneath my palms. Every part of me was awake, aware, and overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of it all. Finally, we both pulled away at the same time. Our breaths were uneven, but the bond between us had only grown stronger. Was there anything to say? I wasn't sure. but one thing was clear. Tonight had changed everything between us. I realized then that I was breathless, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I looked into Ryan's eyes, I saw something unspoken, a question, a longing, a deep, undeniable desire. For the first time, my mind was completely quiet. My heart and body were making the decisions now. "Ryan," I murmured, my voice shaky but my feelings unmistakably clear. He waited, his gaze locked onto mine. "Yes," I whispered. "I want you." The words slipped from my lips and something inside me shattered. The loneliness, the fears I had carried for years, melted away in an instant. All that mattered was this moment, being here with him. For a brief second, surprise flickered across Ryan's face, but then, slowly, a smile spread across his lips, his expression mirroring the warmth that surrounded me. "I want you too, Eleanor," he said, his voice low and certain. He spoke, his voice both soft and firm. "I've been trying to hold back, but I can't anymore. I want you. I want to be with you." His words washed over me like waves, each syllable touching my heart. Ryan gently cupped my face in his hands and moved closer. This time there was no hesitation. We both knew exactly what we wanted. When his lips met mine again, the intensity of our emotions went beyond words. This moment was a turning point for me. Ryan's presence, his warmth, his words. Despite all my fears, I wasn't planning to stop anything now. I had surrendered completely to the flow of my feelings. Now, with nothing but a thin sheet over us, breathless and tangled together, Ryan lay beside me with a small smile. I looked up at the ceiling, noticing our clothes scattered across the floor. The night felt surreal, like a dream. Ryan turned to face me, that captivating smile still playing on his lips. His hand gently brushed my cheek, his thumb grazing my lips. "Eleanor," he murmured, his voice deep and soft. "I wouldn't trade this moment for anything." I turned to him, emotions still swirling inside me. With sincerity in my voice, I whispered, "Thank you, Ryan. I haven't felt this whole in so long. But you being here, young, strong, so caring, I really like it." I let my gratitude shine through my gaze, not hiding the sincerity I felt in my heart. Ryan's lips curved upward into that signature, charming smile. "Eleanor, do you know how beautiful you are?" he said. "And I don't just mean on the outside. Being with you is different. Your warmth, your sincerity, everything about you makes me feel better about myself." I couldn't look away from him. His words, his touch, everything felt so real, so powerful, as if this night would be forever etched into my memory. "I needed you, Ryan," I admitted, "and you were here. I couldn't ask for more." Ryan smiled slightly, his fingers running along the edge of the sheet. "I'll be coming here a lot, Eleanor. From now on, whenever you need me, I'll be here," he said, his voice full of determination. "Just to see you, just to give you these moments." In that instant, I felt as if a new door had opened in my life. The burdens and loneliness of the past slowly faded into the background. Having Ryan by my side filled me with a deep sense of trust and peace. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and moved a little closer to his warmth. This night was just the beginning, the first step of a new journey. Knowing I wasn't alone anymore was more valuable than anything else. I hope you enjoyed my story. It has been an incredible journey, and I'm so happy to share it with you. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Turning on notifications means you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. Your likes and comments mean the world to me. Hearing your thoughts and feelings truly motivates me. Your support helps me continue writing more. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next story. My name is Lily Carter, and I just turned 20 this year. I live with my parents in a comfortable home in Oregon. My family has always been financially stable, never having to worry about food or money. My father, Ethan Carter, is a successful architect, a man with a strong presence and unwavering determination, while my mother, Olivia, is a compassionate and nurturing school principal. Our life was peaceful in that warm home until one day everything changed. That fateful day, the sky was overcast, thick clouds looming as if foreshadowing something ominous. My mother and I were in the kitchen preparing dinner as usual, waiting for my father to return from work. The kitchen was cozy, the scent of her homemade stew filling the air, creating a comforting atmosphere amidst the cold wind outside. But that serenity was shattered when the phone suddenly rang. It was my dad. I froze as my mother answered. Within minutes, our world was turned upside down. My father's voice trembled, starkly different from his usual confidence. He explained that his firm had gone bankrupt, that he had lost everything, and that we would have to sell our house to cover the debt. Those words struck like lightning, leaving my mother and me speechless. Everything we had built, including our beloved home, would no longer be ours. I turned to my mother and saw her trying to stay composed, but the worry in her eyes betrayed her. "You both must leave for the countryside as soon as possible," my father instructed, his voice laden with exhaustion. "Go live with your grandfather. At least there, you'll have a roof over your heads." His words stunned me. My grandfather's home was a place I had visited only a handful of times. Ever since my grandmother passed away, he had lived alone in an old house. My memories of him were from childhood, warm, playful moments where he treated me like his little treasure. But it had been years since I last saw him, and his face had become a blur in my mind. The next morning, we packed our bags and left behind the house that held so many memories. My father was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared after delivering the devastating news. It was just my mother and me in the small car, driving down an unfamiliar road. The scenery gradually shifted. Towering city buildings gave way to winding dirt roads and vast open fields. The quiet stillness of the countryside felt almost suffocating. When we finally arrived, an old house stood before us. The roof was weathered, the walls bore cracks, and time had left its mark on every surface. Surrounding it was a sprawling garden with overgrown fruit trees swaying in the wind. Stepping out of the car, I hesitated, feeling like a stranger in this new, isolated world. Suddenly, the front door creaked open, and my grandfather, Henry Carter, stepped out. His posture was slightly hunched, his deep-set eyes carrying the weight of time. When he saw us, his lips curled into a faint smile, but something about him felt unfamiliar. I remembered him as a man full of warmth, but now there was something else, a quiet intensity that unsettled me. His gaze lingered on me longer than expected, not with the playful affection I recalled, but with a deeper, unreadable look. I dismissed the thought, telling myself it was just the result of years apart. But deep down, an inexplicable feeling gnawed at me. I had no choice but to adjust to this new life, to accept the changes that had come crashing down upon us. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything forever. We greeted my grandfather, and he enthusiastically led us into the house. Inside, everything was old and simple, yet meticulously maintained. Though the furniture was modest, he had taken great care in preparing everything for us. The house was clean, and he had arranged a comfortable bed for my mother and me, a gesture that spoke volumes of his thoughtfulness. It wasn't as luxurious as our previous home, but it had a warmth of its own, different yet comforting in its own way. In the early days of living with my grandfather, everything felt peaceful. He was always attentive, sharing stories from his youth and helping my mother adjust to our new way of life. However, as time passed, I started noticing something unusual. His gaze lingered on me in ways I couldn't quite understand. At first, I dismissed it as a mere observation, but soon it became impossible to ignore. Whenever I stood in front of the mirror combing my hair or sat in the garden reading a book, I felt as though I was being watched, and every time I turned around, I would catch my grandfather looking at me. Unlike the warmth I remembered from my childhood, there was something enigmatic in his eyes, something I couldn't quite place. I reassured myself that perhaps it was just the contrast between city and countryside lifestyles. Back in the city, I was used to wearing light and comfortable clothes, whereas my grandfather had not seen me in years. Maybe my appearance surprised him. Maybe he was simply adjusting to how much I had changed. I convinced myself there was nothing to worry about, chalking it up to unfamiliarity rather than anything more concerning. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. My mother had gone to town early in the morning, leaving just my grandfather and me at home. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creaking of the wooden floorboards. I sat on the old but comfortable sofa in the living room, flipping through the pages of a book I had already finished days before. Outside, weak rays of sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden hue over the room and creating a serene, almost dreamy atmosphere. I was lost in my reading, oblivious to the faint rustling sounds behind me, until my grandfather suddenly entered the room. He carried a plate of neatly peeled fruit, apples, pears, and oranges arranged in an appealing pattern. With a warm smile, he placed the plate on the table and spoke in his usual gentle voice. "You should eat. I just prepared this for you. You need plenty of fruit to stay healthy." I glanced up at him, returning his smile. "Thank you, Grandpa," I said softly, picking up a slice of apple and taking a small bite before turning my attention back to the book in my hands. His small gestures of care had always been thoughtful, and I appreciated them. But as I continued reading, I became aware of the stillness in the room. My grandfather had sat down on the chair opposite me, his eyes fixed on me in an unbroken stare. At first, I assumed he was just resting, but as the silence stretched on, an odd discomfort settled in my chest. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. The weight of his gaze filled the space between us, making it impossible to focus on my book. I shifted slightly in my seat, trying to ignore the prickling sensation running down my spine. Then, in a quiet voice, he finally spoke, breaking the silence. "You've grown so much," he said, his tone tinged with nostalgia. "It feels like just yesterday that I was holding you in my arms, and now you've become such a beautiful young woman." I lifted my gaze to meet his, forcing a small smile despite the unease creeping up my spine. "Yes, time flies so fast, Grandpa," I replied gently, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. But his eyes didn't hold the same warmth I once knew. The look he gave me was different now, something indefinable, something that made my cheeks grow hot with discomfort. It wasn't just admiration or the fondness of a grandparent watching his grandchild grow. There was something else lurking beneath his expression, something that sent an unsettling chill through me. I wanted to believe I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into a simple moment. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted,